Is $250 enough to get you your marathon PR, or should you double it and throw down $500 instead? Let's compare the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 4 versus the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro Evo 1. What's up everybody, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and you're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today we're going to be comparing the Pro 4 versus the Evo 1, but if it's your first time watching one of my videos, you may notice some timestamps below. Feel free to jump around to the various parts of this comparison, but if you do so, I would sure appreciate if you come back and watch the full thing when you get a sec, as I put a lot of time and effort into these videos. And if you haven't already hit that subscribe button and turned on notifications, please do so now to get notified when I drop new videos, which are typically on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But to start off the year, we're doing daily videos. And as always, if you like what you see, please leave a like, leave a comment, tell me what you enjoyed or what I could be doing better to make these even more entertaining for each and every one of you. Now, to kick off this review or this comparison, I always like to do a disclaimer or disclosure, and with this one, there are none. I bought these shoes with my own money or was gifted them by friends who are not in the industry or associated with the industry. Regardless, no one ever pays me for my reviews or comparisons. No one gives me scripts, talking points, no one watches them beforehand. All thoughts are entirely my own. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of these two shoes. Now, these two shoes have the same use, which is to race a marathon and race it fast. These are the premier super shoes from Adidas. The Pro Evo 1 is going to be the single race optimized, you know, it's the one where it's the shoe you're going all in for that PR for, versus the Pro 4 is this just in a more affordable package of $250 as opposed to $5. Now, the difference in intended use here is probably that the Evo 1, you're probably not going to want to get many training miles at all in. You want to save its best miles for the race itself. So you may actually even train and do a lot of your training in the Pro 4 and then race in the Evo 1, just depending on, obviously, your budget. The Pro 4, on the other hand, is going to have a little bit more durability. It's going to allow you to do a couple more training runs in it, but it is primarily used for race day. So intended use for the most part is the same for both shoes. Now, from a price point standpoint, we've already kind of talked about it, but the Pro 4 comes in at $250 and the Evo 1 comes in at $500. Moving to the specs though, this is where the shoes start to separate a little bit, where the Pro 4 comes in at 7.1 ounces and 201 grams. Meanwhile, the Evo 1 comes in at 4.6 ounces or 130 grams. So this is, I believe, the lightest racing shoe, period. It's probably the lightest modern running shoe at all. I do think maybe I think I saw maybe there's like a Chinese brand that has a slightly lighter, I don't remember if it was Anta or one of the other ones, but as far as kind of major running brands, Adidas takes the cake in terms of weight. Don't be confused though, 7.1 ounces is second only to the Meta Speed series from Asics as far as the standard super shoe category and their respective weights. So both of these shoes are incredibly lightweight for what they are. The Evo 1 just takes it to a whole new level. From a stack perspective, they're going to be fairly similar. You have 39 in the heel, 33 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop on the Pro 4, and the Evo 1 is 38 in the heel and 32 in the forefoot for a 6mm heel to toe drop as well. So heel to toe drop, setup, everything is going to be fairly similar overall. From a fit perspective, I found that they do fit actually a little bit different. I found that the Evo 1 was a little bit shorter than the Pro 4, and honestly, like, the Pro 4 fits a little bit short as well, but I went true to size on both of these, and I don't think I would need to half size up on the Pro 4, but I kind of wish I had an 11 instead of a 10.5 in the Evo 1. I did race a full marathon though in the Evo 1 and didn't have any issues with like chafing or bloody toenails or anything like that, and so, you know, take that for what it's worth, but I do feel like the Evo 1 fits a little bit shorter. As far as fit throughout the shoe, both have actually somewhat wide toe boxes, but the toe box in the Evo 1 is low volume. So even though it's maybe wider on the toe box itself, like the height is very, very low. And then I found that they both fit somewhat narrow to standard in the midfoot and then have narrow heels overall. Overall volume in the Evo 1 though, it's kind of hard to get on. It is less volume than the Pro 4. The Pro 4 seems to be a little bit more accommodating, and the material, we'll talk about the upper, but the material seems to be a little bit more stretchy. Now, unfortunately, you're probably not going to be able to try the Evo 1 on in store. but that's the one that I would maybe consider half sizing up on. But if you're someone who is on the longer end of your current size, you may want to half size up in the Pro 4 as well. But if you can go to a store that has it and try it on, I would highly recommend you do so. Now moving to the upper, the Pro 4 has a micro fit upper. It's this really, really lightweight, really breathable material. It's very, very comfortable. It's very, very soft. And despite being thin, it has some good structure overall. They also put in some different layering and different like TPU overlays and different things in the shoe to give it a little bit more structure, but the upper is very, very lightweight. And then the other thing with the Pro 4 is you have the fit lock, which is basically the tongue of the shoe is not gusseted, but it is stitched onto the shoe, which is really, really nice. And it keeps everything locked in place there for you. I found that the tongue wasn't a struggle in the Pro 4. And speaking of struggling tongues, the tongue in the Evo 1 was frankly really, really disappointing. The upper of the Evo 1 is just this mesh. It's just a crazy lightweight mesh. You can see your entire hand through the shoe. You can see your socks. Like, it is paper thin, and when you feel it, like, you feel like you're going to be able to really tear this, but the upper holds up actually really, really well. The thing though with this upper though is that the tongue is not gusseted. It's just laced onto the laces, and then it kind of bunches up down here where you put your foot in, and then the tongue scrunches down by your toes, and then you have to kind of get in there and readjust it. Really, really frustrating, to be honest. I wish that they had used kind of the fit lock or the light lock process that they used in the Pro 4 on the Evo 1, but I understand that they were trying to save any potential weight that they could. The other thing with the Evo 1 is the laces. I did have to use a runner's knot with the Evo 1 to get really, really good lockdown. I did find I shifted a little bit in the shoe sometimes, so with that lockdown, the runner's knot was a little annoying because the tongue is very short. With the Pro 4, I didn't have to do any additional lockdown or runner's knot, and I didn't have any issues with lockdown in this shoe. So from a fit of the upper perspective, even though the Evo 1 is a lot more low volume and a lot more snug, I actually really prefer the overall fit of the upper in the Pro 4. Now, both of them have those heel tab kind of setups there with that felt-ish material, as well as some light cushion in the heel. I think it gets it done, and I didn't experience any rubbing or pain at all in that heel Achilles area. Now, something to consider with the Evo 1 is there is no liner, or there is no insole. So you're just gonna be right there. You can actually see the stitching in the shoe versus you do get an insole in the Pro 4. It really actually wasn't an issue. I thought it would be a little bit annoying. I thought about putting my own insole in the shoe, but really they just saved all the weight that they potentially could, and it ended up working out. So no complaints there on the insole or lack of in the Evo 1. Now moving to the midsole, they're both Light Strike Pro foam and both have the carbon fiber energy rods running through the shoe. Now the major difference though is that the Evo 1 midsole is basically cut from a single sheet of this foam versus the Pro 4 midsole uses a more standardized process. Now that's one of the reasons why the Evo 1 is a little bit more expensive, other than just also being kind of a premium shoe. But as far as like how that feels or how that compares, I actually found that the Evo 1 Light Strike Pro, they're both TPEE, both supercritical, but the foam is a little bit more supportive. It's not quite as squishy versus the Pro 4 is a very, very squishy foam. I think it might be one of the squishiest super shoes on the market. So the tooling of the two foams are a little bit different. When I run in the Pro 4, it feels like it compresses a lot and it does rebound, right? But it's a soft, it's a squishy, it's a bouncy experience versus with the Evo 1, it doesn't feel like the foam compresses a ton underfoot. It is soft, but it's a lot more of a soft and supportive. And I do find the shoe to feel a little bit more rigid. Both of them are going to be rigid because they have the carbon fiber rods, but the Evo 1, it does feel a lot more rigid underfoot. And you kind of feel almost as if it's going to feel dead, but then you get moving and you get those feet turning over, and it's very fast. It's a very, very fast, lightweight experience on your foot. Now, as far as stability goes, both are inherently a little unstable, but I actually find the Evo 1 to be a little bit more stable. The Pro 4 I actually find to be fairly unstable. So if that's something you're going to consider with these shoes, the Evo 1 is actually a little bit more stable. Now, something of note with the Evo 1, one of the reasons why I believe that, it's single race optimized, and so its shelf life is going to be a lot less, or its durability is going to be a lot less than potentially the Pro 4. Part of that is because the foam hasn't really been compressed in a similar way that the Pro 4 foam has. So one thing that's kind of interesting is if you look at the, and you may not be able to see it, but I'll try and get that glare there. If you can see on the outsole there are some lines that are running along the foam, and it's starting to show through on the shoe. It's actually like I can run my finger across it and feel it kind of bumps. What's going on there is actually the foam is compressing and the energy rods in the foam are showing through the outsole, right? So because this foam and the way it's cut out and the way it's created, it hasn't been really condensed the same way. So I do believe that these shoes, the more and more you run in them, the more you're squishing down that foam, and you're just, you know, going to get less and less return out of it over time. And you may start to feel those rods a little bit more on your feet, and it's going to be fairly harsh. Moving to the outsoles, you have that liquid poured rubber on the Evo 1, and then that GCPU rubber on the Pro 4 with the Continental rubber there on the forefoot or toe area. Now, both of these have done really, really well for me on even on wet roads. I actually, my whole marathon that I ran in the Evo 1, it was raining almost the whole time. There was noticeable slippage when you got on, there was noticeable slippage when you ran on like the painted lines on the road when those were wet. But so long as you were on the actual road itself, I didn't have any issues. One thing that I did have issues with actually with this shoe, which was interesting, was when I would step in a puddle, if the puddle was deep, then I would almost float on top of that puddle. So I wouldn't slip. It's like almost like having a kickboard in the water and you push it down and the water fights the kickboard, right? It felt like that. So the foam just almost wanted to sit on top of the water and I had to push down with a lot of force in order to get through the puddle. So something to note on that, I don't know if that's like partially because of the rubber itself on the foam and that combination. Again, I wasn't sliding, I wasn't hydroplaning, but it was an interesting overall sensation versus like with the Pro 4, you hit a puddle, you just drop into the puddle. I have not run in as many wet situations with the Pro 4, so I don't know if maybe in wetter conditions this would be a little bit more risky, but overall I felt like the shoe has done really, really well and it's held its own. The GCPU rubber does a good job, and it's actually really, really thin too, so it's not adding a ton of weight to the shoe, but it's not as thin, obviously, as that Evo 1 rubber, which is liquid poured on. Now you can see there on the lateral side, there's obviously some of the midsole foam exposed, and the same thing is true on the Pro 4. But looking at those shoes, I haven't had any wearing or durability issues there. That would be mostly a concern if you supinate. Obviously, you're gonna be running on the outside of your foot, and then you may tear up the foams there. But overall, I thought the rubber did really good for both of them. I like that there's full coverage. I think the grip might be a little bit better on the Pro 4. Again, I haven't run in the exact same conditions, so hard to say, but the Evo 1 rubber did really, really well overall. Now, as far as my pick, that's really hard to say. I really, really enjoyed running in the Evo 1, and I actually think I'm gonna try and take it out for a spin, may even try and do my next 5K time trial in it, because I think it's got some life left. I only have like 50 or so miles on the shoe, so I think I can put more and I'll be okay. I saw some report of people testing it where it gets up to about 100 and feels really, really responsive, but just the lightweight feel of the shoe is pretty amazing. Now, the real question here though, is it worth double the price? And to that, I don't know. It should be an easy no, but it is a pretty crazy, phenomenal shoe. But the Pro 4 is a really, really good shoe as well. I could race a good marathon in the Pro 4. I really enjoy the Pro 4. You know, it might be a little bit squishy for some people, a little bit soft for some people. So I do prefer the underfoot feel of the Evo 1 for sure. But the Pro 4 at $250, where a lot of shoes are gonna be closer to that $300 range going forward, feels like a really good price. It's a really, really good shoe, and I can definitely race in this one as well. So is it worth paying double the price? Probably not at this point in time, because some of the technology from the Evo 1 has trickled into that shoe. But shoes often come down to preference. So you may not be asking yourself, should I get the Evo 1 or the Pro 4? It may be, should I get the Evo 1 or the Nike Alpha Fly or the Saucony Elite, right? And so something to look out for. But these two shoes, although they look very, very similar and they have a lot of similar elements, honestly, like there's a lot of differences in the shoe, and the underfoot sensation is one of the biggest ones that I found. I kind of wish that the Evo 1 midsole could go on the Pro 4 upper, and that would be a probably better experience for me personally. But all in all, it really comes down to, you know, runner's preference, as all shoes do. So just some final thoughts here. Both shoes are phenomenal. Both shoes are expensive. Running is an expensive sport now with the cost of shoes, and it keeps on climbing. But both shoes are really, really awesome, and I've been really, really happy with both of them. I have seen samples of the Evo 2, not from Adidas, but just going around online. I'm not sure when that's going to release, but the Evo 2 looks like it has a little bit more of the geometry of the Pro 4. So I'm really going to be curious to see, you know, where the Evo line goes from here on out. Is it going to be $500 again? Is it going to be really single race optimized again? We'll see. Asics also looks like they may be coming up with a shoe that is similar in terms of like single use kind of, you know, you'll have your Meta Speed series and then you'll have this premium professional level shoe as well, where the regular super shoes are going to be more for general public use or just preference. So really curious to see where these lines go, what happens with these two shoes. But all in all, I think you're going to be happy with either of them. Just depends on which one you want. And again, how big your budget is. So if you watched this far, I sure appreciate you. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, hit that like button, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you liked today and what questions you might have about the differences between these two shoes. And as we round out this comparison, I'll leave you with a question, as always, which is, how much more would you pay for a shoe or a race to guarantee a lifetime PR? Because isn't that really the question we're asking here? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks, everybody.